The Gray Door. I've been a building surveyor for 26 years. I've walked through derelict factories, condemned tower blocks, listed buildings held together by habit and dry rot. You develop a feel for spaces, for what's structurally sound, for what wants to come down. Harlow Grange Asylum closed in 1991. The council acquired it in 2019 and sat on it for 6 years before finally greenlighting demolition. My job was straightforward: assess structural integrity, flag anything of heritage interest, sign off the report. A 2-day job at most. I'd done dozens like it. I arrived on a Tuesday morning in October. Dry day, low sky. The building was enormous, 4 stories of Victorian brick stretching back from the road, the original administrative wing flanked by 2 long residential wards, windows boarded, grounds overgrown, the kind of place people take photographs of to post online. I signed in with the site security, one man in a temporary cabin who barely looked up, and went in through the main entrance. The ground floor was standard dereliction. Peeling paint, collapsed ceiling tiles, the smell of damp and something chemical underneath. I worked methodically, room by room, checking floor joists, noting cracks in the load-bearing walls, photographing anything that needed flagging. The east wing matched the plans exactly. The west wing matched. The administrative block matched. It was when I got to the north corridor that things stopped matching. According to the blueprint, the north corridor terminated at a fire door leading to an external yard, 42 meters from the main junction. I paced it myself, 42 meters, and reached the fire door. Pushed it open. External yard. Exactly as drawn. Except I'd been counting doors as I walked. The blueprint showed 8 on the left side of the corridor, 7 on the right. I'd passed 9 on the left. I stood there in the cold air from the open fire door and counted back in my head. 9. I was certain. I walked it again. This time I marked each door with a chalk cross, 1 through 9 on the left. The 9th door sat between the 8th and the fire exit, fitted into a section of wall the plan showed as blank. The door itself was different from the others. Where every other door in the building was institutional green, scratched and peeling, this one was a darker gray. And the paint was not peeling. I stood in front of it for a long moment. I told myself there were any number of explanations. Plans get updated, rooms get added, a later conversion, a partition wall, a utility space. Surveyors work from the most recent plans available, and sometimes the most recent plans are 20 years out of date. I'd seen it before. I tried the handle. It opened. The room beyond was small, 6 feet by 8 perhaps, a single metal-framed bed, a chair, a bedside table with nothing on it. The walls had been painted recently. I could still detect the faint smell under the damp. A single window, boarded on the outside, let in a thin line of pale light. And on the door, on the inside, was a nameplate. The kind they used in institutions, a small metal frame designed to hold a card. The card inside was white. The printing on it was clear. Hail, M. My name. I'm not a superstitious man. I stood in that doorway and went through every rational explanation I could construct. A common surname, a previous patient, a coincidence so unlikely it felt designed. I photographed the nameplate. I photographed the room. I wrote everything down in my site notes, hands steady, breathing measured, because that is what you do. I walked back down the north corridor and out through the main entrance and sat in my car for 11 minutes. I know it was 11 minutes because I watched the clock. I have sat in a lot of cars over the years, waiting outside jobs, eating sandwiches, writing up notes. I am comfortable with silence. I'm comfortable with my own company. Those 11 minutes were the longest I have spent inside a vehicle. I kept returning to the nameplate in my mind. Hale, M. I turned it over the way you turn over a problem, methodically, from every angle, looking for the solution that makes the most sense. My surname appears in the 1881 census approximately 12,000 times. There's nothing remarkable about the name Hale. There's nothing remarkable about the initial M. Matthew, Martin, Michael, Margaret. 100 names beginning with M. I told myself this. I told myself this carefully and at length. Then I drove back inside. I finished the survey. West corridor, upper floors, roof inspection. I was professional. I was thorough. I did not go back to the north corridor. I completed the job I had been contracted to do, and I drove home. That evening I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. Harlow Grange had been a private asylum, one of the smaller county institutions that proliferated in the Victorian period and declined through the 20th century as attitudes toward mental health changed and funding dried up. It closed in 1991 when the last 11 residents were transferred to community care facilities in the surrounding area. At its peak in the 1930s, it had housed just under 200 patients. The County Heritage Archive had digitized the admissions records in 2022. Complete ledgers going back to 1887. I searched the name Hale. Nothing. I searched variations. Hale, Haley, Hales. I searched the initial M against every surname in the records. I spent 2 hours working through the ledgers systematically, the way I work through a building, room by room, no shortcuts. There was no patient at Harlow Grange whose name matched the nameplate. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. I lay in the dark and listened to the house settle around me and thought about painted walls and metal nameplates and the particular quality of silence in a room that has been sealed for a long time. I slept badly. In the morning, I drove back to the site. The security guard wasn't in his cabin. I went inside, down the main corridor, turn left, north corridor. I counted the doors as I walked. My chalk crosses were still there, 1 through 8 on the left and then the 9th. The gray door. I stood in front of it. The nameplate was there. Hale, M, and below the name, something I hadn't noticed the day before, or something that hadn't been there. A date, printed in the same clean type as the name. Tomorrow's date? I didn't open the door. I walked back down the north corridor, back through the main entrance. I got in my car and I drove home, and I called my manager and told him I was sending the report over and that someone else would need to complete the site sign-off because I had a family matter to deal with. He was fine about it. I've not been back to Harlow Grange. I drove back to the site office and asked the security guard, when I eventually found him, how long he'd been stationed there. 3 weeks, he said. Had anyone else been in the building? Not on his watch, he said. Before that, he couldn't say. I asked him if the name Hale meant anything to him in relation to the site. He looked at me properly for the first time. No, he said. Should it? I filed my structural report that evening. Complete. Professional. Accurate. I noted the unlisted room in the north corridor, recorded its dimensions, photographed its contents, flagged the discrepancy with the existing plans. I made no mention of the nameplate. The demolition is scheduled for spring. I've checked the council planning portal twice a week since October. Sometimes I tell myself I should go back before they pull it down, see the north corridor one last time, confirm that there's a rational explanation for all of it. I haven't gone. I keep thinking about that date, about whether it was a warning or an appointment.